we project on social media something that we're not in a lot of cases. But growth doesn't come from the illusion of who you think you want to be. So whoever you're projecting, you're never going to grow from that point. You've got to get real with yourself and say, this is where I am, this is who I am, and these are the areas that I need to change. Ever wonder why it's so hard to take the first step in change? It's all about the tug of war between seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, influenced heavy by our past and habits. In our journey, we've stumbled, faced our lowest, and learned the true power of that first daunting step towards change.
We've seen firsthand how our drive to dodge discomfort often keeps us from the growth that lies just beyond our comfort zones. Breaking down big dreams into small, manageable tasks, embracing our imperfections, and setting up routines for success have been game changers for us.
So let's chat about the importance of stepping out, even when it's the last thing you feel like doing. We're sharing our insights on aligning life closer to what truly matters and how with a bit of courage, you can start penning a new chapter of your story.
Welcome to Rewrite Your Story, the podcast where change begins with you.
We're your hosts, Stephen and Sharlene.
As professional coaches and mentors trained in various modalities, we have helped hundreds of people
Bridge the gap between the person they are
and the person they want to be.
We bring you conversations with real people who have overcome real setbacks.
You will walk away with practical steps to find more clarity, alignment, and success in any area you want to improve.
So join us and discover how you have the power to overcome, to change, and to rewrite your story.
So pick up the pen. Your new chapter starts now.
So in today's episode, we're going to be dealing with why is the first step always the hardest when wanting to reach the right part of your journey and take the next step. And obviously this is our interpretation of some of the things that we believe it is. But one of the things we discussed about is people don't have clarity of what they really want.
They feel like, they're relying on what they think they want rather than what they really want. And we don't even take the time to really ask ourselves that question. What do I actually really want in life? What do I want to achieve?
And that is so important because what we think we want is usually external influences. Mm-hmm. And there's, one of the quotes that you'll hear me saying a lot when I'm working with clients is, it just is. Like there's no right or wrong answer. It just is. Yeah. And so what you want in life is your life and your story. And obviously there are things that we need to consider. We need to consider the ecology and the ethicness of our decisions. Yeah. How ethical and the impact they have on others. Mm-hmm. But that is more at an ethical standpoint and a value standpoint rather than having others describe what they think we should be in life or who they think we should be.
Yeah, so we're looking at social expectations. What do people expect of us? And is this something that we really want, or is it something that we're wanting to please other people because of the expectations that have been put on us?
So I think the first hindrance people have, is rather than knowing what they want, they think they know what they want. And you've got to get really clear and you've got to get really motivated as to what it is you want. You've got to get crystal clear.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do as well with what will people say of me if I go for this?
Yeah, absolutely. So putting behind people and people's expectations, but then also say, if you feel that you want to be, I don't know, a world champion heavyweight lifter at the age of 60, is that right or wrong?
I don't think it's right or wrong. It's just how realistic is it in such a short time though?
Yeah, and your journey as well. Is it part of your journey or is that what you think you want? So what is the actual thing that's going to bring you? And sometimes it's the thing that's going to bring us that is actually what we want, not the actual thing that we think we want. So it's the emotion associated with achieving the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's how the outcome at the end of achieving that we really want, not the actual action.
Yeah. Another thing that we believe is pain versus pleasure principle. So people don't start in their journey, or people are procrastinating in their journey, is because humans are motivated by the desire to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And this principle influences our decision-making and actions.
Yeah, it certainly does. What would happen if we just stay where we are? What is that going to look like?
A classic example is in the area of finance. When we work with clients, and I'm sure when you've worked with some of your clients, people put massive action when it comes to getting out of debt,
Yeah.
or when they've got no money to pay bills, and they make things happen because the pain is so strong. But when they get ahead in their finances and the pain is no longer there, they repeat the same cycles because one of their motivators is pain rather than pleasure. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy hamster wheel where we're always seeking out pain in order to motivate us. There's also the thing that people seek pleasure more than pain. So the person that's always partying or playing on their mobile phones rather than taking actions, playing games on their mobile phones, it also gambling addictions, things like that. That is the pleasure or the thrill of the gamble or the thrill of that. So it's those endorphins and, pornography, for instance, it's those endorphins being released.
Moments of pleasure.
Moments of pleasure. And so they're motivated by pleasure rather than the pain. So there's a bit of aspect of those. And I love and this is not new, is it?
No, absolutely not new. I mean, if you look at Romans 7:15, the Apostle Paul himself said that I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. How confusing would that be for us?
And that's exactly what's happening to a lot of us at the moment. And, there's still aspects of that in our lives, though we are more aware of that now and can work through it. But knowing that our decision-making is either motivated by pain or pleasure, and sometimes we don't do what we want to do because the motivators are not in alignment with the goal. So it's really looking at which two of these motivators are in action in your life. Historically, but pain has been the stronger motivator.
So talking about motivation, like we're looking at the fact that, sometimes you avoid immediate threats, and that was based like many years, many centuries ago for survival, because they had those guys had to get away from animals, tigers, trying to get away from that. Like immediate threat was always imminent. So they had to find a way for survival to avoid that pain and to avoid getting eaten, right? But these days we're not facing that kind of danger anymore. We might have to face other kind of dangers, but it's not like that extent. But we still keep living it. So we are back in that era.
Yeah, so there's that fight or flight still in action at an unconscious level. I love what Tony Robbins says. He says the secret of success is learning how to use pain and pleasure instead of having pain and pleasure use you. If you do that, you're in control of your life. If you don't, your life controls you. So when we start acknowledging and identifying and bringing from our unconscious awareness to our conscious awareness that our motivators are pain or pleasure, and we start to have control over those motivators, then we control our life.
Wow, that's powerful, isn't it?
And
have you seen that in your review life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at the classic examples of I'm not a sporty type person, or I do have ADHD. Let's take the ADHD example, for example. So with ADHD, obviously my monkey mind goes crazy at times. And for me, it is the pleasure of the distraction rather the pain of being focused.
Yeah.
So I need to stay and I need to realize that actually I'm going to have greater pleasure when I'm focused because I'm achieving my goals rather than the pain of the immediate focus.
Right. See, that's like a sustained or basically delayed gratification.
Yeah, delayed gratification. Yeah. Exactly. So, but, again, that wasn't until I was actually formally diagnosed by a psychologist of having ADHD that I could actually relate and think, oh, yeah, that's actually right, So now I'm knowing that when I'm wandering and not focused, I'm like, hang on, this is an area of my life that I need to consciously be aware of and consciously work on now and ground myself in that.
I love that. So you've not actually used that as an excuse to just do it, fall into those habits. You've used it to spur you on to do better things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing is the influence of time as well. So I need to realize that time is linear and that the immediate dangers or what is more painful for me, the immediate or the future. So if I look at time as linear, then I need to be motivated more by future benefits rather than the immediate pain, for instance. So that's really important for me when looking at being motivated by pain and pleasure, Because I know if I'm focused on the immediate pain and pleasure receptors, then that will lead me to
It's
procrastination.
so true, isn't it? And that's why we tend to get ourselves into procrastination so many times, because we're so worried about having to do these hard tasks in order to get to where we want to go, because we're trying to avoid pain now.
Yeah. And I think that's really key, is looking at time as linear rather than in the moment as well. What's another one?
We're very emotional beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to think more emotionally rather than logically, especially when our amygdala is going crazy in our head, when it's sounding off the alarms that something's not right here. This is not pleasurable for us. Let's do something to get the attention. So it becomes really emotional and really heightened, right? So we tend to sometimes act out of those emotions rather than the logic. And that's what stops us from taking those actions towards something that's maybe better for us than what we're currently doing.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to immediate gratification, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What did you call it?
Amygdala.
The amygdala is going crazy and we want immediate gratification in the now rather than looking at the long-term gratification that comes. And again, it comes to our society. We're such an instantaneous society. We want everything.
Especially with all those notifications on our phones, right?
Yeah,
Quickly answer it.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. So emotions over logic, not being driven by your emotions, but rather think logically. And I think one of the greatest tools that a mentor of mine has taught me, who is a good friend now, is always take the 24-hour rule. Do you know what I mean? Never make a decision within 24 hours. Now, we're not talking about decision, do I buy, brand X or brand B at the supermarket in the bean aisle. Okay. We're talking about major decisions.
Life-changing decisions.
Life-changing decisions, or decisions that might have an impact on others. Take 24 hours rather than the emotional satisfaction of making that decision.
Yeah.
And you know what I've learned in that, Sharlene, is that if people aren't willing to wait 24 hours, then they don't respect you as a person. So it's also about setting those boundaries around the emotions versus logic and thinking things through. And usually we make better decisions once we've slept over something as well.
Absolutely. And I think coming back to those boundaries as well, if someone's not willing to wait for you to make that decision, that's a red flag already. That's a straight no.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one is perception and awareness. So our personal narratives and beliefs lead us to actions of pain or pleasure, right? And they influence our behavior. And a lot of our expectations of pain or pleasure are actually from our childhood. So what we've actually modeled our parents and what we've seen happen in our life as grown-ups or mentors in our life growing up in the foundational years. So the way we perceive things can sometimes at an unconscious level be motivated by pain or pleasure, therefore stopping us.
Absolutely.
Our perception of what others believe of us, words that have been spoken to us as children.
That we take it on ourselves.
That we've taken off as our own beliefs. You're never going to achieve that, or you're never going to amount to anything, or you're just like so-and-so. Why couldn't you be more like such and such? Yeah. These type of words spoken over us that we've internalized can actually also lead to what and how we are motivated. So that is about our perception, but we need to bring awareness into that to know, okay, these are drivers at an unconscious level in my life. How do I overcome them?
When people speak over you as a child, obviously as children, we don't have the capacity to make conscious decisions about our emotions and whether we believe things. But we just take things on so much, so readily. So it's not your fault that you've taken that on. But when we do get to adults, the great news is that we are responsible for our own change. So we can make those changes once we get to that certain age, and we can look at what's been affecting me. What are those unconscious patterns that I've taken on at an unconscious level as a kid that I can change?
When you're working with a client, I know you use many modalities and many techniques that you've learned over the years, but what's some way that someone can discover a limiting belief? Or what's one way that you use?
Yeah, I think sometimes I'll have a sentence. I'll listen to some of the words and then I'll repeat it back to them and I'll say, complete the sentence. And if they come up with in that sentence, they complete it in the negative, then that helps them to realize, oh, okay, I just realized I'm saying that a lot. Like I'll call them out on their repeated patterns of phrases that they'll come back with, things that they say, I can't do this or I can't do that. And I'll repeat it back to them and say, so you're telling me that you can't do this? And have you noticed that there's like a pattern of this every time we come to a certain point in a conversation? You're saying this is something that you can't do.
So when someone is saying, I can't do something a lot, obviously there is a motivator of pain there.
Yeah.
Or not pleasure, because the pain of I can't do it is there. And by feeding back to them, when you're seeing that, you're actually seeing patterns of limiting beliefs when a client says that over and over.
Absolutely. We're seeing patterns of those limiting beliefs. When I feed it back to them, it helps them to become aware of that. And they say, oh, okay. People don't necessarily listen to themselves when we're talking, right? Like we'll say things and then we catch ourselves like later on and think, why did I say that? We're not really aware sometimes of the things that come out of our mouth at an unconscious level.
That's scary. What patterns have you seen in my life? The next one is the role of negative consequences and positive outcomes. So I think we need to realize that if you're not moving forward and you're not rewriting that story, is the consequence of inaction and the benefit of action what's greater? And it's identifying, if I don't take action in this area of my life, what's it going to lead to?
Yeah. Like if I do something now, down the track, how is that going to affect my future?
That's right. So for instance, let's take healthy eating habits. Okay. So the consequence of not eating healthy, or the consequence of inaction, and by the way, eating healthy is whatever it is to you, could lead to, health issues a lot in several years' time, could lead to, heart disease, could lead to type 2 diabetes. The inaction is greater than the action, the benefit of the action, because taking charge over that, we can see that we can be motivated and take encouraging steps that, hey, I'm going to live longer. I am going to, break these generational patterns over my life. I am going to break these generational things because I'm taking action that others in my generational lines never took.
So having the why ahead of you, thinking, why do I want this? And saying like, what is the outcome that I want to see at the end of this? How will I feel? And trying, just really engaging in that feeling and bringing that positive into that moment helps you give that long-lasting perseverance towards those through the hard steps of becoming that new person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's looking at it this way. What is greater, the pain of inaction or the pain of action? So you're not going to have the cheesecake today, but the pain of not having the cheesecake today is going to lead to pleasure tomorrow.
Feeling great, feeling
motivated. So again, it's the inaction versus the action. What pain is going to be greater in the long run?
That really reminds me of one thing that you've quoted from someone, and I can't remember where he found it from, but they're saying nothing tastes as good as feeling healthy feels.
I can't remember who I got that.
In that context as being fit feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing, I think it was a personal trainer I had actually.
Possibly,
yeah, nothing tastes as good as being fit feels. And that's just one quote in this area. So again, it's looking at which pain is greater, the pain of inaction or the pain of action, and then using the pain of action to propel you to the joy of pleasure in the long run.
Understanding and leveraging motivation, how can we do that?
I think it's recognizing the balance between avoidance and pleasure seeking, and leveraging this knowledge can really help you facilitate overcoming procrastination or the feeling of inadequacy forever. So what do I mean by that? So if you balance between pain avoidance and pleasure seeking, you can see like if the pain of avoidance is greater than the pain of the pleasure it's going to bring me,
yes,
then you need to switch the flip and see that the pain that the pleasure is going to bring you is worth more than the pain of avoidance.
Yeah, absolutely. Would there be a little part there about putting little stops along the way that it's almost like a reward for doing those actions? Like say, for example, we want to get fit, right? Not everybody wants to go to the gym, right? That's going to just really take the joy out of becoming healthy or fit for some people. But people might like to go to the beach. People might enjoy like being immersed in nature, and they can use that to guide them along the way and keep them motivated in their health journals, like in their health journey or their spiritual journey, if they want to get out there and just feel more free.
Yeah. Like for instance, it could be, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, so I won't give too much, but it could be the pain of less sleep sometimes is far more beneficial than the pain of sleeping in and not achieving your goals.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Both are painful, but the results are different.
Choosing our pain.
It's choosing our pain. I like that. So choose your pain. Oh, that's a good one. We could just end the podcast right there. Choose your pain wisely. The next one is understanding procrastination and fear of failure.
Oh, this is a rich one.
Okay. So a lot of people think, I procrastinate and blah, 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 blah. But when you come to the root cause of procrastination, it's fear of failure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Or it actually could be perfectionism.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And seeking instant gratification. So we really got to look at procrastination is, so what?
So what if it's not perfect? Right?
So what if you fail?
Yeah.
What are the lessons you've learned from failure? Like how many times have we failed in life?
Yeah.
And still to this day, there's many areas in my life that I fall short,
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I feel that if we are really feeling triggered by the fact that we failed something, then there's obviously something that we need to work on, like a deeper seated issue that we need to get through about like our beliefs about ourselves. What do I need to accomplish in order to feel like this particular person, to feel like this person? Or sometimes we have like, I guess, a separation between who we are and who we actually want to be, right? And sometimes who we want to be is based on expectations of other people.
Yeah. And you know what? Just be yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can't actually grow from a place where you're projecting you are. You can't change the projection. So I think, and this is just came to me, Sharlene. I think one of the things that let's use social media. We project on social media something that we're not in a lot of cases. Not everyone. Some people are real. You got your moaners and your tell all on social media and your dirty laundry. But then you've got people that project a persona, for instance. Yeah. And we're all guilty of that. I don't care what you say. Most people are guilty of that. But growth doesn't come from the illusion of who you think you want to be. So whoever you're projecting, you're never going to grow from that point. You've got to get real with yourself and say, this is where I am. This is who I am. And these are the areas that I need to change. Yeah. And it's only from that real place that we can actually change. It's only from that real place that we can actually grow. Now, you can't grow from what you think you are. You can only grow from who you are.
I love that.
And that comes from, again, a lack of self-esteem, which could be childhood trauma, could be, it could be adult trauma. Like we tend to bring everything back to our childhood, but it could be adult trauma. It could be just repeated failures that have become your truth now. And your self-esteem has diminished in that area because of the patterns of constantly failing. And so we project something that we're absolutely not. You can't change from that projection. You got to get real. You got to get authentic. You got to get.
It's like the navigator, right? You can't give it a false location if you want to get somewhere.
Well, I like that. Yeah, you can't say start there when I did.
Exactly. It just makes sense. But it just also comes to the point of like the perceptions of what failure actually looks like. Who says you're a failure if something doesn't work out? If that's something that you're trying to do wasn't really what you wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, so that's true. So that's not really failure, is it?
You just set yourself up for doing something that someone else wanted you to do. That's not your failure. It's just something that's not worked out because maybe that wasn't something that you were meant to do in the first place.
I think it's and when we look at change, we've seen the motivators of change. We've seen how procrastination is a lack of action or fear of failure or perfectionism. But we need to really look at the complexity of change. So change, I believe, first of all, is a decision. And I think it's John Maxwell in his book, Today It Matters. And I remember seeing him at a conference, I think it was in 2002. Like it was a long, long time ago when he came to Australia. He said something and it resounds in his book. He said, the decision is made once.
And acted on daily.
And acted on daily. And I think that's the importance of change.
Yeah.
The decision is made once to change, and then we act upon it daily. Just because we choose to change doesn't mean, hey, press abracadabra, it's going to happen overnight.
You know that, as through my learnings and counseling, I've learned that there's also many stages of change as well.
Okay.
Like we might come to a point where someone will be in a position that they don't really know what they don't know until they see something that has shed light on that and they realize that something's got to change, but maybe they're not ready to change yet. They haven't come to that decision that they need to change. Then through encouragement, through therapy, through perspectives from other people in their circles that might be supportive of their change, they might be able to challenge them and say, what do you think's happening here? And like when they realize that what their resources, like their strategies are not working now, then they'll come to a point that they'll say, okay, maybe I need to do something now. That's getting closer to that change. When they realize that, then they'll start to be more willing to make those steps to change.
That's good.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, Sharlene, I'm on two minds of this one, and I'll be honest with you. Is it easy to, obviously any change in itself is not easy, okay, because it requires identifying, hey, that was just a habit and I don't need to act on that habit anymore, and that a lot of our mindsets and beliefs are just habitual, and it's breaking those habitual thoughts in our life. But my question to you is, and I don't think there's a wrong or right answer to this the more I think about it, but my question is, should you change every area in your life and take massive action, or should you work on an area, get encouraged by that area of change, and then bring something else on board, even if it's 1 or 2 days later or a week later or a month later?
I think that's a really great question, and I think it just depends on where you're at in life.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's a lot for people to think of changing a whole life. But I mean, sometimes it takes just a decision sometimes, or one word that can just shatter everything. Like all those beliefs that you've held in your life, all those, limiting beliefs that you've believed and the lies that you've had about yourself spoken over you. Just sometimes one word can shatter all those disbeliefs and help you to make those changes in every area. Like it's like a domino effect. Like when one thing shatters, everything else falls into place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a place for massive change.
Yeah.
And there's also a place for staged change.
Yeah, stage change. Absolutely. You might not be at the stage yet where you feel like you need to change every aspect of your life, but know that once you do start to make a change in one aspect, that will domino effect through all the other areas of your life.
I like it. So we've talked about staged change, but what about setting the stage for change? I think there's, people want to change areas, but there needs to be a certain amount of preparation when you want to come to change.
Oh, yes.
Like some people actually don't take preparation, and we've heard of preparations, parents, piss poor performance, the 5 Ps, right? And so we've heard of things like that, but I don't think people actually realize that you actually sometimes need to prepare for change and stage the change.
Yeah.
Okay? So what are some things that you could suggest or prepare the atmosphere for change?
Apart from getting really clear about what your values and your goals are, like they align with those values, and see if they do align with, like your goals may not align with the values that you have. And either one of your values might have to shift somewhat to be able to achieve those goals, or your goals might shift according to your values. But just being really clear about that and having a place to write it down, really get clear of what you want to see happen. And then looking at the small steps that need to be put in place to achieve those goals.
I think it's really important that you get clear on where you are now.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, get clear on where you are right now. So be honest with yourself, so you can actually, take those realistic goals as well and really set the stage. And then probably from there, by getting really clear and breaking it down, you need to find cues or things that can actually support you in that goal, like the tracking, for instance, one of the great things if you want to have a fitness goal is get a coach or mentor, get a personal trainer, for instance.
I guess that brings us back to accountability, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and being accountable. I think then we can actually fall into the preparation is we're never taking action because we want to get into perfectionism. And
especially in those goals when we want to set up everything and then we have all these little knickknacks, all the calendars, all the schedules, and we make it all look pretty, but then we don't do anything, right?
we don't do action. I'm working with someone at the moment, one of our clients, and they're so busy doing social media posts and creating photos and creating all these posts that they're actually not moving forward at all, thinking that all the creation is going to make their business grow. And I'm like, there needs to be some other action here. That's only a percentage of your business. So I think preparing the place is important, preparing the environment, preparing the stage for change is important, but also taking action.
Because according to Harry S. Truman, he says that the imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. And how many students actually go through that, right? They get their assignment in and they've completed all the answers, they've answered all the questions, but then they come back to it and think, oh, this is not right, I have to fix it.
And re-look at it.
And trying to take maybe a certificate to a diploma or bachelor level of English, but that's not what you're asked to do.
Yeah, that's so true. I think another thing that we underestimate when it comes to change is actually setting up routines.
Yes.
And habits that align with your goals. And they can significantly increase the achievement of your goals. And two books that we've read, and I know you love one of them more than the other, but they're both great books. And the first one is The Miracle Morning Bar by Hal Elrod. And the second one is The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. And you really love that book because it's not an actual, it's more of a
story.
It's a story. Yeah. It's written in story form with characters and all that. But the principles are very similar, is in if you want to achieve success in some area of your life, set up a morning routine. Now, morning routines are really important. And yes, they are so important to get your mind frame and your frame of mind right and set up the day for action. Don't limit yourself to morning routines. Is there a night routine? Is there a midday routine that you need to follow to get into action? What are some of those routines that you can establish in order to get close to your goals? It could be simply that, I remember, Sharlene, you struggle with drinking water, and you weren't drinking enough water during the day that was recommended. And so you set up a routine that you would set an alarm on the hour every hour and have a quarter of a glass of water. And then you built that up, and until that routine then became habit, and habit became action. And then now it's an unconscious behavior that you drink enough water.
Yeah. And there's so many other ways that you can get around like those hesitancies to do those particular routines by making it, I guess, pleasurable for yourself to do those things. Like, for example, like for me with water, because I struggle with just having plain water. I love to have a taste, like I enjoy the senses of taste. So I'll put things like lemon or mint or something that makes it more pleasurable to actually go towards. And I look forward to drinking water. So things like even setting up a routine when you want to go for an exercise or walk, like after work, find something that's pleasurable to go with that. Like maybe perhaps your favorite music that you like to listen to in your earphones, or bring your dog along, if you have a pet, bring your pet with you, take them for a walk and enjoy that.
The next thing that when you're setting up that routine and you're setting up the environment is actually you need to see yourself as though you've already achieved it.
Yeah.
Because the unconscious mind takes everything literal. So if you're seeing yourself as not achieving that goal, that is your reality. But you actually need to see yourself as in the possession of the rewrite and the final chapter, the outcome that you want. You need to see yourself as that person in that place and really get emotionally involved in that visualization.
Okay, Stuart, so I want to play the devil's advocate for our listeners here.
Oh, great.
Isn't that just like lying to ourselves?
Is it lying to ourselves? No, I don't believe it's lying to ourselves. I believe in it's rehearsing our reality.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, rehearsing our reality.
Yeah, so when you're on a stage, actors rehearse, and Shakespeare said the world is a stage, Yeah. So it's rehearsing the reality that you want your life to be.
Yeah.
And bringing that into being. And really working with your unconscious mind so that the unconscious mind, because remember your unconscious mind, the conscious mind is the goal setter, but the unconscious mind is the goal getter.
Yes.
And so that once we start feeding that unconscious minds with the goal that we want, then our reticular activating system, and that's a whole nother training there, a whole nother podcast talking about our RAS. But our reticular activating system then goes into action and starts to identify, starts to see, and starts to bring those things into being into our lives.
That's a great answer. And it's like, it actually reminds me of when we're in the crux of doing NLP, we learn that the unconscious mind does not know the difference between true and not true. And how many times do we actually use our imagination, right, for things that are not true, that we're worrying about? We use that a lot for negative imaginations. We worry and we think about, what could I do? What happens if this happens? Or what happens if I do that? What will people say? Things like that. These are imaginary things. Again, that could be lying to yourself, but that might be just the way we imagine how things will be. If we can use our imagination for worry, we can use our imagination to set ourselves up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think moving on from the visualization is the celebration of even the small things. Even a small progress is a win. But then be careful, because a lot of people fail in this area. The success or the celebration is the very thing that you are trying to move away from. Do you know what I mean? So, for instance, I'll just have a small treat, when you're trying to lose weight.
Yes.
Right? And so you have that chocolate bar, but that's the one thing that gets you undone. Well, first of all, you're not a dog that you need a treat. You need celebratory things that make you feel good. Don't turn to the old pattern as the treat.
That's right.
Okay. Or I'll just do this once, or I'll have a cheat time or a cheat meal or things like that. Don't call it that. It is what it is. You either have it or don't have it. Yeah. Don't put labels on things. But if you're going to call it a treat unconsciously, you're already setting yourself up for failure.
So it's not about then celebrating how we used to be and the way we used to be. We're celebrating the victory of who we are now by encouraging that through a new way of celebrating.
I like that. The final step to actually taking action and moving to action and rewrite is community. We speak about it a lot. Healing, transformation happens in community. And so what you want to do is get people around you that are supportive of your goals. And sometimes you need to find new people, and that's okay. Sometimes you need to not share what you actually are doing with the people that are currently in your life. And that's okay. There are people out there that want to support you, and there are communities in place for that, and reach out to us again, as we say. But I love what Helen Keller says. Do you want to share?
Yeah. So Helen Keller says, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much.
Yeah. And so it's that compounding effect of people getting together, raising the vibration, raising the language, raising the atmosphere, and really causing a change, not only in your person, but vibrating that change around. And I think that too is so important when it comes to rewriting our story.
We think that we are lone islands in this world, but everything that we do sets the stage for the community that we're in. It affects the people that we're around, whether we think we do or not. Because if we have a really great attitude and we do certain things, it makes a difference in the atmosphere that we're in.
That was a great podcast where we just gave a lot out there. So I guess for you, Sharlene, what are some of the main highlights that you want our listeners to take out?
Looking at how we can visit our limiting beliefs to address those false beliefs that we've had in our mind that stop us from going for what we want, and realizing that we can actually use pain and pleasure for our good and control pain and pleasure rather than having pain and pleasure control us.
And I think that is so vital to anything when it comes to change. I think the key, number one, is getting clarity. Start from where you are, not from where you think you are. I loved your analogy on the GPS. But two is really know what your motivators are and make sure that you're motivated by the right thing. It's either pain or pleasure. But make sure if you're motivated by pain, know which pain is motivating you. Is it the pain of being where you are or the pain of making change? And I guess, Sharlene, some ways that if people are not sure what's motivating them. They can do things like eliciting their values, eliciting their motivations, and what actually works for them and what is motivating them. And there's some really cool tools and modalities out there. And if you want to know more on what motivates you, make sure you just email us at hi@stephenandsharlene.com, and we will definitely reach out to you. You can ask us any questions there, but give us a bit of a background. Again, that's hi@stephenandsharlene, and we'll get back to you with some tools that could address or help you in that area as well.
Thank you for joining us on the Rewrite Your Story podcast.
We hope you found this episode enlightening.
For more information on the topics discussed, please visit our website at stephenandsharlene.com.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, share it with your friends, and follow us on social media at Stephen and Sharlene.
Until next time, stay informed and inspired.
This is Stephen and Sharlene signing off from the Rewrite Your Story podcast. Thank you and stay blessed.